It's another edition of Time About the Movies, and today we're taking a look at the movies of June 24th, 1994. We have three movies here, but we honestly looked at one of those movies last time around. That was The Lion King. Like I said before, this week was the big wide release for it. It was a huge hit. And we already talked about that movie, so we're not going to talk about it this week. We do have two other movies to look at, so let's go ahead and talk about those movies. We'll start off with the biggest of the two new releases that we have here, and that is Kevin Costner starring in Wyatt Earp. So it is kind of hard to talk about this movie without, of course, talking about Tombstone, which came out 6 months prior to this. And Tombstone was a much better movie. Tombstone was a much more very stylized, visually pleasing, overall decently told story. This movie had good intentions to it. I mean, Kevin Costner's name is on it. And at this point, he had done a couple of really good movies that really cemented his status, like Dances with Wolves and Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves, and also JFK and The Bodyguard. This was his first major stumble as a filmmaker. This is a movie that, of course, he's the centerpiece of it. He was the producer on it, directed by Lawrence Kasdan. We talked about Lawrence Kasdan's work in the past. Grand Canyon was a great film we talked about. We talked about I Love You to Death, The Accidental Tourist. He made some great movies like that. But I mean, when you compare this to Tombstone, Tombstone was just a much better movie. I think Tombstone did a better job of telling that story about Wyatt Earp a whole lot better than the movie about Wyatt Earp itself. I think the big problem isn't Kevin Costner. He is trying his best with this. It's just that it's just bloated with so much stuff. This has a huge cast to this that just feels rather unnecessary. You've got Dennis Quaid, you've got Gene Hackman, you've got Jim Caviezel, Jeff Fahey, Mark Harmon, Michael Madsen, Catherine O'Hara, Bill Pullman, Isabella Rossellini, Tom Sizemore, Jo Beth Williams, Mare Winningham, Adam Baldwin, Annabeth Gish, Betty Buckley. Just some notable names in here that just feel kind of forced into it. And coincidentally, it's interesting how Costner was actually involved in the original production of Tombstone, but he left that film to focus on this film. And I think it was also meant to be a 6-hour miniseries at one point until they cut it down when Kevin Costner joined the cast and they decided to make it into a film, it's interesting to think about that because I think that's what happened with Gettysburg, which came out the year prior. I think Gettysburg was originally intended to be a miniseries, and then Ted Turner decided to put it in theaters. And again, Gettysburg I think is a far superior movie. This just feels like they put way too much into this. Like the movie just doesn't feel like it's trying to tell a good story. It just feels like it's way too long. It's not a very good script. I mean, the production is clearly there. I think it's a movie that I think benefits more from the style over the substance. And despite Kevin Costner trying his best with this, it just feels very lackluster compared to what I saw with Tombstone, which Tombstone was a much better film. I mean, there's really nothing else more you can say about it. Tombstone was a much better film. This just feels like they're putting way too much effort into this that's not really all that there. Like, I mean, I don't know. I mean, like I said, Tombstone I think is the much better film. Wyatt Earp just feels like they over-bloated it with so much stuff, more stuff that felt unnecessary, stuff that didn't feel like it needed to be there, and it just didn't work. It was a movie that had a lot of ambition to it, probably, but Tombstone did it a whole lot better. Also, opening it in the summertime, usually you don't put this type of a movie in the summertime. Like, if you're expecting this to be your big Oscar contender, you put that out in the fall, maybe you put it out in early August, but not in the middle of summertime when you've got all these big blockbusters out there. I mean, probably Warner Brothers knew that this was bad, and they just said, you know what, stick it in the summertime. We'll just, if it hit, we'll go with it. If it bombs, we'll just say that we'll just try to cover our asses. And that's pretty much what they tried to do here, and it didn't work. So that's Wyatt Earp, and let's go to the other movie that we have here. A movie I never even heard of, the documentary "Freedom on My Mind." So this documentary basically chronicles the Mississippi voter registration movement of 1961 to 1964, which was characterized by violence against the people involved, including multiple instances of murder. We're talking about civil rights in the 60s in Mississippi, and that's really all I know about it because I've never seen this movie, and I hardly ever heard about it until I actually did the research on this. And I mean, it is about what you expect from a documentary of this type. It's not. I mean, it definitely could be something that could be interesting, but I just don't have the interest to see it right now. And I'm not saying it's bad or anything, but it's just not something that's on my radar. I mean, it could be decent. It could actually be pretty good. I've heard some pretty good things about it from the research I did. So that's pretty much all I got for you. Maybe it is pretty good, but that's the other movie that came out this weekend of noteworthiness. Freedom on My Mind. And so, on that note, we'll wrap up another edition of Time About the Movies. Next time we meet, we'll jump into the month of July. We've got 5 movies in particular, 5 notable movies in particular to look at, including Alec Baldwin starring in The Shadow, Jeff Bridges and Tommy Lee Jones in Blown Away, Nick Nolte and Julia Roberts in the action comedy I Love Trouble. One of John Hughes' most underrated movies he had his name attached to, Baby's Day Out. At least in my opinion it is, but I'll delve more into that next time. And the baseball comedy Little Big League. So we'll take a look at those 5 movies next time. But until then, thank you very much for watching. And if you want to see more videos like this, please hit the playlist on the next page. Check out the previous episode. And I will see you guys tomorrow for another episode. So thank you for watching. I'll see you next time. And until then, as always, take care.